Okay, welcome back to another episode of our definitely titled show, Family Injustice or Family Justice Denied. We're sticking with that title, Joni. Um, so Joni's been away for a little while. She had the pleasure of going to Toronto at the PASG conference. So let's just start. How was the conference, Joni?
Very informationally packed. We had over 60 sessions in 2 days. Clearly, obviously, you couldn't get to every session, but those that were, most of it will be done. Let me, how do I explain this? They're going to make videos of them. They'll try and redo these sessions so that everybody can see what they didn't get to see because there was just so much information, too much. We're going to figure out how to make it available, or they will
Well, it's
figure it out.
basically what we did with our conference up in Connecticut was we broke it down per speaker, edited the videos, and put it out there for everybody.
Right, but we were
Uh,
only one time slot session. We had six time slots per hour. So you couldn't possibly go to everything.
yeah,
You had to choose
but
one or bounce between two. When we did ours, there was only one session. There was
but a
only
lot
one
of time,
event going on at a time.
yeah, but a lot of times at these conferences, that's the way it is. You have
I
six of
know.
the things going on at the same time, and you got to pick which one you want to go to.
And it's
Um,
really bad. It's really, really bad. It should not be like this. If you have this much information that's going on, then you need 2 extra days, or you need to choose which ones are valid, and the other ones will be part of a training program or education program that you can use for advancement, whatever. But it became what would happen is those of us that knew what was going on, we didn't go to the ones we knew were tape recorded. What we did was we went to the ones we knew weren't recorded because the other ones we could see anytime we wanted them.
Well, the thing about it is, PASI has our conference, and then PASG has their conference. You're seeing more and more organizations like these, like ours and PASG, having these official conferences, allowing parents, professionals, judges, lawyers to come and get on the same page when it comes to these subject matters of parental alienation, family court reform, and everything. And I think it's amazing that you're starting to see that turn.
Well, what's amazing is that there's so much information out there, so much stuff that needs to be imparted to parents and professionals and judiciary that we end up with 60 things in 2 days, 60 trainings going on in 2 days. And you only have so much time to do it in. That says a lot. That says there is tremendous amount of information that needs to be looked at, imparted, learned. At any rate, either way, the conference was great. Lots of great information. Um, you know, hopefully anybody who wants to see some of this and hear what the professionals and parents saw this past week, definitely join the PASG. And you'll be able to, all of this will come up online, and you're going to have access to all these free webinars that were from this conference, and be able to watch them. You'll be able to download the PowerPoints and or the handouts from those that are allowing it. So it was a great conference. And I really part of which was I got to see a lot of my colleagues that I have not seen in so long, because I don't go to all the conferences, and they don't go to all the conferences because if they're out of the side of the country, sometimes we just can't afford to do it.
But
This
that's the
one
other
was
thing. I mean, when we were in Colorado, which was my first conference with PSG, I noticed that a lot of the people who've gone to these conferences before or different conferences treated it more like a reunion, and they included people like myself, newcomers, and gave us all this brand new information that we have been looking online for and all this stuff. There, it was readily available from the individuals who wrote the stuff. I
Yes, you're
mean,
right. It was a chance for a parent to listen. Did a lot of us professionals get approached by parents wanting information? Of course, yes. which makes it hard because we're there to learn. And we don't, but a lot of us stopped, gave us some time where we could, but it was such a jam-packed set of sessions that,
Yeah,
we were just going.
but that's also the difference between their conference and the conference we had back in what, September, October.
October 11th to the 14th, I think
Um,
it was.
Ours was more of a one-on-one for everybody across the board, professionals, parents, advocates.
Well, we
It,
were teaching something completely new.
exactly, so if you are wanting to get into that stuff, I highly suggest going to these conferences, getting on their websites, booking their conference schedules and stuff,
Um,
and going.
a lot of
Um,
stuff can be done virtually. The if the well, let me rephrase that. The conference that at Toronto, because there were 6 sessions per hour, only 2 of them were being recorded. But the some of them were virtual. That if somebody had the ability to do it, you could see them. So people virtually only got access to certain things. That's not so bad because in the end, the ones they didn't have access to will be available as
I
well, I
mean,
believe.
our conference was virtual for anyone that wanted it. And
Right.
we had, if I recall, the first day we had nearly 40, 50 people on our conference virtually. Um, with
Actually, I
modern
think
day
all of them were
technology, everything's possible anymore.
right. Well, it is also possible. See, I didn't pay too much attention to the videoing that was going on, other than I knew that the main 2 rooms had it. Most of the other play rooms did not have video. I don't know if they had Zoom because I didn't sign up virtually. At any rate, it doesn't really matter. We're learning from this process. We're learning how to put together better conferences that are more geared, whether it be to the parents or geared to professionals. So, and that's a good thing.
Okay. So we did our plug for the conferences. So let's move on. Um, One of the things, when you messaged me last night, you gotten back, I wanted to give you time to rest and everything. And you asked me, well, what subject are we talking about today? I said, well, why don't we talk about how the court systems, the lawyers are using the term, and I say this loosely, the term medical neglect in custody cases. And when you look into it, you'll find out that it's being used largely one-sided, no evidence, and it's being used in, let's talk about social service cases to terminate the parental rights.
Yes. And that doesn't happen just in divorces, folks. That happens in intact families. Um, I have a client, I have a friend, I would say, the parent, she had a brain injury, still married. Her husband's helping her out, and she has somebody, her caretaker. They took custody of her children from her, even though she had somebody helping her, and her husband, the father, was perfectly capable of taking care of the kids. This is abuse of the disabled.
But you see it more and more today. I mean, I think what's happened is you have the silver bullet tactic, which was huge for a long time. But I think, and let's just explain, the silver bullet tactic is using false allegations in a custody case divorce to gain steps on one side. But I think people have learned how to navigate away from that. And now they've come up with a new way under the guise of medical neglect or medical issues to do their same path.
So let me explain some stuff to people. So, because those are 2 different paths. So, medical neglect is when a parent isn't providing or allowing to be provided the necessary medical care to a child. That could be dental, therapy, primary care, surgery, whatever is medically necessary for a child's well being. The other type of medical issues is when a parent their medical conditions are used as grounds to remove a child, even though the child were not in an unsafe situation. There was, as I said, the client who had a brain injury. but the father was still available and in the family, he wasn't even allowed to have the kids. The brain injury was not preventing the mom from being a good parent. She just had needed help with it. That is the point of the ADA, that if the first end of it is to help provide necessary assistance for a parent to be able to parent their children. In this case, the mother was not a danger. She wasn't violent. She had a brain injury that compromised her ability to do certain things. It is why she had a caretaker, an assisted caretaker. It is why the father and she had the father who was still there as a parent. If we had somebody, a parent, who came back from the war, who was completely paralyzed, would we take their parental rights? No, we would not. Would DCF now obviously if that was a single parent, yes, there is a problem there. You have to hope that, but DCF and CPS's job is actually supposed to help keep the child with family first, providing the necessary resources to assist this to happen. If a parent was paralyzed, CPS or Child Protective Services responsibility is to see if there is another family member who could assist with the children. Blood relatives first before you send them out for foster adoptive care. That's the law. Problem is, our federal government created something called Title D 4D or D4, the 4D, wherein the Child Protective Services gets additional funding for every child they place in foster adoptive care, so long as they aren't a relative. It should be the reverse. It should be they get that money if they're able to safely place the child with first blood relative, second, another family. And the next family would be friends. You would go from blood relative to friends to then a stranger. You want to try and keep as much stability for those children as possible. But the government has set it up that you take that stability away and let DCF and DCF can only get that money if it's a stranger.
And it's funny you brought that up because the actual title is Title 4E for that
Hmm.
particular situation.
They changed some of the stuff changed
Yeah,
over time.
and that's the thing. They keep changing how they want to title it and all this stuff. But what amazes me is that, I know a case in Pennsylvania where the parents were taking their child to the hospital. Doctor called CPS, said that the child's being abused because the child wasn't even a year old and it had broken bones or healed bones. And come to find out that the child suffered
At
from
brittle
brittle
bone,
bone syndrome.
I've heard so many of these stories.
Well, it gets better. It gets better. So they finally, after I think a year, got a full diagnosis on the child. No abuse. It's brittle bone syndrome. They were educating the parents on how to take care of them. The prosecutor is going after them for abuse.
And this is, I can't, yes, Clint, this is every single one of the cases that I know of with brittle bone. The prosecutors always go after for abuse. That's nothing new when there's brittle bone because they don't bother to check it. The
Exactly.
prosecutors are so gung ho to have their control and to be saving this child's life. Excuse
Well,
me.
let's look at it this way. Let's look at the subject that is always popular when we talk about this stuff: domestic violence. When domestic violence victims gain courage to leave and there are children involved, lots of times the abuser won't let them take the kids. So they
Correct.
go to court. Several courts view the victim as aiding the abuser when it comes to the child because they have allowed it to be seen, be heard. So the victim gets the child taken away as well.
Right. I had a similar situation where they tried to pull that shit on me. Excuse my language, folks, because it was shit.
We're R-rated, yes.
You, a parent doesn't always have the ability to just walk away. They have to make sure that not only are the kids going to be safe, but they're going to be safe so that if they get the kids, they're still alive. If the kids are taken from the parent, the other parent is still alive to be able to care for them or
Yeah.
still mentally capable. This we all get. That is, and then there's the situations where the parent that is having the problem because of a medical condition. And it's not, and once they get the medical help they need, they are fine. And I had something similar happen to me where there was an incident. DCF stepped in and told me my that accused me of neglect because I allowed my um then husband or my fiance to come back into the home. But he had already been through therapy. He was already doing AA. He was already doing group therapy. He was doing what he needed to do.
Mhm.
He was getting mental and medical help. When we went to court, neither DCF nor family relations showed up. And the judge said, well, I guess if they're not here, then they must be okay. Then they're okay with all the work you have done. And he said, the restraining order is lifted. We went down, told family relations, can you please refer us to a proper family therapist? Because he was doing his therapy, I was doing mine. We needed proper family. Oh, well, if the judge dismissed the case, it's out of our hands. Went to DCF, made the same request again. Oh, if the judge dismissed the case, it's out of our hands. They turned around and tried to go after me for neglect because I allowed him back in the home. Yet I came to them. I got lucky because I had a pro bono attorney, and we demonstrated, along with my therapist, that I went above and beyond. And the judge actually said to them, you dropped the ball, DCF. She came to you. She came to family relations. You dropped the ball. I was lucky. This is back in the 90s. Today, these doesn't happen like this anymore. Somewhere along the line, the system has gotten corrupted or lost its way. If this was an intact family that didn't want to break up, what would we be doing?
Well, it's funny you ask that because I'm actually in communication with a mom who had the same thing going on. Now, what amazed me when I was speaking with her, I'm not going to say her name because the case is ongoing, and there's some other things that are going to happen once the case is done. But what got me was she explained to me that they took the kids from her and her husband, married, intact, under medical questions. Then, after about a year, they agreed to give the mom back the kids under the condition that the husband leave the home because they were going after him now for domestic violence. Now,
Okay, but that's reasonable because there's domestic violence.
there was no domestic violence. That
Oh,
was the first time that term came up is when
oh,
they made this bargain. Okay, so husband and wife talked. They said, yes, let's just do whatever we need to do to get the kids back. Most parents are that way. So husband moved out, moved 2 counties over. Kids come back. Now CPS is trying to force a divorce
well,
on the situation.
DCF cannot force parents to get divorced, and there clearly is a reason they want them divorced because then they can get more money or whatever. There's money going on here,
Yeah.
clearly. And this is very sick. DCF should not be condoning a divorce. They should be condoning working on creating a healthy, safe family. They should have been providing them with co-parenting coaches, family therapy, family relations, anything that helped them to heal the family and be the parents they need to be for their kids. DCF is acting reckless. In fact, I would call this child welfare endangerment by DCF and CPS.
And the thing about it is when she told me all this, I was flabbergasted. It was the first time I've ever heard something this detailed, and she documented. These are very smart individuals. They've documented everything. And I'm like, so they're not just taking your kids, now they want you guys divorced. And I'm like, if it's happening to one, That's the old saying. If it's happening to one, it's happening to
Others. Yep.
multiples. And I started thinking about it when I got off the phone with her. I'm like, we as a society believe social services is going to help our families, help our children.
Correct.
When in reality, it seems more that they are the keystone
To destroying.
to destroying families, injuring mentally, emotionally, damaging children by separating them from loving parents.
Yes.
Now,
Don't get us wrong here. We understand when a parent has neglected a child physically, mentally, and emotionally, and with their basic needs of clothing, or even that is minimal. It's because remember, just because you don't have money to put clothes on your back, we're not taking children from the Africans. They have little loincloths they wear and a little top. That doesn't mean that because they don't have a full dress of clothes on that they're being neglected. Inappropriate size clothing that happens when parents don't have the money. But the kids still have clothes on. I'm not saying that they're appropriate for their size. I'm saying it is what that parent may have available to them if they are financially struggling and or don't know how to get to thrift shops and donation centers to get what they need. Okay? What we're talking about is we're not talking about the parent who has abused their child physically, sexually, or psychologically by terrorizing them. Those parents do not need help. They should not be in the physical home with the kids. Not until either their behavior has changed and they have learned and gone through their own family of origin issues, or it's been deemed that all the allegations are false. Now,
here,
this
here,
is where
here's
the problem comes in.
let me pause you right there because here's the kicker to this. As you say this, I know thousands and thousands of actual abusers still have visitation and custody of their kids, where loving parents don't. So
But that's
where is
where
the where's common sense in this?
there is no common sense. Okay. Common sense went out the window a very long time ago. When the dollar became more important than the child. Look, we all get that those who have money and the connections can, where allowed, deviate this from the proper system and the appropriate protocol for things. Because you got a greedy person on the other end or somebody who's been threatened, the terms and the terms of the scenario have changed. It is no longer a level playing field when somebody can do that. This
And that brings us back to the mental health issues of parents and children
and being
and
loud.
being, I mean, we don't talk about, we're going to talk about it on a future show about the increased suicide rate of parents for the simple fact that they've been separated from their children under erroneous allegations.
Right.
You know,
That's why, Clint, we are so adamant that proper training and education are in place so that within a short period of time, it really shouldn't take more than a certain paperwork being filled out, comments and the comments from the parents that are going to help us to see what's going on. It shouldn't take a year. It shouldn't take 6 months. It shouldn't even take 4 months. At most, maybe 3 months for somebody. Technically, you can pretty much know what's going on within a week by things that are being said, by things that have been written. You can have a parent try and write up a chronology and their idea of what's going on. And because from that, whether you believe one side or the other, you can see the parents' personalities coming through. So, and we need better training because yes, there are parents out there, very infinitesimal number, who could use parental alienation as as a false allegation Absolutely. Never going to say that can't happen. It's no different than a parent filing a parent or a person claiming temporary insanity in a murder plea. It happens infinitesimally, but it happens. And so if we want to prevent those type things from happening, we have to have better training in place so somebody can tell when it's one parent, both parents, neither parent.
That's another thing on the spectrum that we all discuss across the board is training, training, training. How do we get the proper training put in, mandatory, and then executed properly?
Yes, exactly. And for those that want to naysay and say, "Oh, it's not real, it's junk science," you may not like the word parental alienation, but the pattern of behavior is consistent with a form of psychological abuse. Whether we call it my big left toe or we call it parental alienation, it is not okay, and it has been around for centuries and only progressively gotten worse. If you want to prevent, if you think it's such junk science, then now you are saying that that all the diagnostic codes for psychological abuse are junk science. My colleague, Dr. Lynn Steinberg and Charity Schneider and I did a project where we compared five, four forms of child psychological abuse with parental alienation. We found 40 different behaviors in the five groups. Of those 40 behaviors, and if you want, I can pull this charting up and share it with you. These 40 behaviors, 38 were consistent in all five forms of psychological abuse. The five forms of psychological abuse that we compared, well, obviously parental alienation, but it was compared to brainwashing, coercive control, custodial interference, and child psychological abuse. I am going to try and pull up that PowerPoint and share it with you because you know what? I'm realizing it might be a good visual for everybody.
Well, why you're doing that, I find it amazing, is that those same terms that you use, those same classifications, are also used in domestic violence.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you're about to see as soon as I share this with you. Okay. So, as you can see on the screen, I have a PowerPoint up. Um, this PowerPoint shows our comparison of parental alienation. Um, my brain just went bleep. Oh, brainwashing, child psychological abuse, coercive control, and custodial interference. Understand, at this far end of custodial interference here, that's a felony. It is illegal all over this country and in many other countries. It is considered parental kidnapping. It is a form of psychological abuse. Coercive control in several states now has been made as a legislative and is a felony or a crime. It is also a form of psychological abuse. Psychological abuse, again, obviously this is an actual diagnosis in the DSM that quantifies as custodial interference, or that custodial interference in child and um, coercive control fall under. Brainwashing, it's another form of behavior that occurs and is a under a diagnosis. So what we found is on the left-hand side, it says signs and symptoms. These are, I'm going to highlight, but these are just some of them. I'm going to flip to the next slide and you're going to see these are all areas that cause psychological abuse in a child. Allegations that are false. Across the board, every single one of these if had this occurring in them. So parental alienation had false allegations, brainwashing had false allegations, child psychological abuse had false allegations, coercive control had false allegations, custodial interference did. Anxiety and fear, every one of the categories. Behavior issues in the children could be seen in every one of these forms of psychological abuse. I could keep going on, but I'm going to go on to the second slide. Now you see there's even more. The only place, here's the next set of signs and symptoms. Here's the next set of signs and symptoms. Okay. Of these 40, only 30, only two of them did not cross over into the other diagnoses, into two of the diagnoses, excuse me. I'm going to search 1 second. So I can bring that up. When we were doing this research, what we found, there was only two categories that didn't occur in two of the forms of psychological abuse. One of them was relocation. This is where a parent relocates the child to another state so far away that they're out of reach to the other parent. We did not consistently see this with brainwashing or in coercive control. The other area we didn't see was record changing. This is when a parent goes in and changes the medical or educational records to reflect a different parent, maybe, as being a contact. They might put a step parent in, or they might put in a fake restraining order that doesn't exist, and so on. The only place we did not see this was in brainwashing. But you might find this very interesting as to what we did find. What we did find when we did all this, we compared it to the ACEs study, or Adverse Childhood Experience Study. This study measured, I think it was 1,700 adults, and how their childhood experiences affected them physically, whether it was internal to their organs or mentally. PA is actually quantified as an adverse childhood experience. What we found when we compared it, 92.5% symptom overlap in our study between the categories. We also found that with the ACEs that 90% of our category items for parental alienation were falling under ACEs. The point is, we could clearly demonstrate that parental alienation is a form of psychological abuse. There is a set pattern of behaviors. We didn't just do 12 behaviors. We found 40 behaviors. We wanted to make sure we had enough behaviors that we could, show a dynamic that might be different. We wanted a larger base. And even with that large base of pattern of behaviors that we saw in parental alienation, 38 of them were in the other four forms of psychological abuse. This is huge. 92.5%, overlap. We're going to do a more advanced study of this. This was just something that we kind of started working on, and we'll probably do there's a name for it, which I can't think of right now, which is an advanced analysis of everything. I think it's called a factual analysis or fact finding, something to that effect, analysis. And that'll
How does all this benefit a parent who's dealing with these issues?
What do you mean benefit?
How does it help a loving parent fight for their kids in a court system that is designed to separate them from their child?
While you have to remember, not everything we give is going to help in the way you want it to help. It's what it does is it helps the parent to have a better understanding of what they're dealing with. When a parent can educationally understand, they can also now adjust how maybe they direct or handle things. So, for example, I'm working with a client who has a 10-year-old and a 17-year-old. This is a very big spread in age. Um, they sent me a chronology to read through of things because I'm teaching this person how to write a chronology. Throughout the chronology, I could see various patterns of things. So I could see where she was making a mistake, and I could say to her, this is a different way of handling it that helps the children to critically think. This might be a different way of saying something or doing something to get the other parent to critically think. So these are the kinds of things I kind of give them and helping them to learn how to think differently, make it almost second nature, so that when they walk into a courtroom, you have a little more of a command to be able to say, Your Honor, when some of these issues come up, I try to help my children to critically think, asking them if this is why this is appropriate or isn't appropriate. And this, so it shows their level of ability to properly parent. Also, by doing this, they're using it on the other parent to try and take the temperature down. The other parent, and alienators or aggressive, coercive, controlling, brainwashing um, parents are terrified of being out of control. They're terrified that these kids are going to love the other parent more than them. In fact, in this case that I'm working with, it is so blatantly obvious in the mother's, and she's not giving lots of adjectives, she's just saying a pattern of what has occurred. It is so obvious that the father is jealous. It is so obvious that he is having difficulty sharing. It's as if his executive functioning stopped at about age 2 or 3. I kind of feel like it is a big possibility that somewhere around the age of 2 or 3, when he's going through his Oedipus complexes, he had a trauma. He was unable to complete this stage of development. And plus, this is the role models he had. So how is he going to know any different? In fact, we can see, I can tell by the mother's description of the children's behavior. When there's no adjectives of like, oh, my daughter was such a jerk. No, she just explains matter factually what occurred. Child became agitated and upset when I asked them to come down to dinner, and their father told them they didn't have to, they could stay up in their room.
You know,
So,
it's
and the child an emotional breakdown because she's being torn between two parents. The kid's hungry; she wants to come down to dinner, but if she goes down, her dad's going to be mad at her. I
you know,
can.
it's funny because listening to these conversations that we have and everything, it just hit me. We say it's been around forever, and with what we were just discussing, the comparisons and stuff, it made me think. Now, I'm a big book nerd. I love reading hardbacks, feel the paper and everything. And Charles Dickens, and we all have to read this in school, Great Expectations. The character you just described, in nearly every aspect of those characteristics, Miss Havisham,
They've got to have
who
total.
did that to Estelle to hurt Pip. If you've not read the book, I suggest reading it because you'll grasp real quick as to the practices that you just described in that same novel from Charles Dickens
Yep. Well, I can go back
today.
even further than that. Okay. I can go back to the Bible, whether you're looking at the New Testament, the Old Testament, or any or whatever. I, I have had both ends show me places where it talks about a behavior that is alienating.
Mhm.
So this isn't anything new. It's just become very perverse. And because it's been allowed to fester and grow, with no accountability and no attempt to heal this person and this family, all we're doing is breeding more crap. These children are the future of this world. If we raise them this way and to behave this way, this is what's going to run our world and our
I'm
country.
going
And
to alter something you said. It's not that we've allowed it to come to. We have learned to weaponize it.
that also, it's been allowed, it's been weaponized, it's been taken advantage of. It's much like the child who goes to one parent and says, "Can I do this?" And that parent says no, and they go, "Oh, wait a minute, my other parent doesn't know I that they said no," and they go to the other parent, the other parent says yes. They've learned how to use their parents, or the parent who says no, you can't go to Joe Schmo's house. I mean, you get where I'm going.
Yep.
They learn to pit the parents against them. It's basically what's going. It's a child's game here. This is not.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, every child that I've ever met, everything, including myself growing up, we want loving parents.
We don't care how we get them to love us.
Exactly. And unfortunately, when stuff like this happens, I've seen it a few times, is the child clings on to the abusive parent because they want that love from them. They make up these fantasy stories. Oh, my mom treats me this way, or my dad treats me this way because they care about me, even though they know it's wrong. But that childhood need for a loving parent rips them apart. And
Yep.
eventually that cycle continues.
Well, okay, so one thing you talked about is psychologically splitting. Absolutely. That's why I think we see so many gender identity issues right now with these kids. Two, um, the second half of your comment was refresh me.
The cycle.
The cycle, multi-generational, and we know this. Unless a child is given the opportunity to experience a different family style, maybe at a friend's house or a relative's, the only thing they know is what they are taught within their home. So this is their role model. Some kids in like the family I'm working with, these poor kids are so psychologically torn. One minute they're screaming and yelling at their mother, the next and breaking things and having temper tantrums and parroting the father. And the next minute they're crying, saying, "I'm sorry, mom. I hate that daddy's so mean to you. I wish he wasn't."
Mhm.
This
I
is
don't
like,
know if you remember when we interviewed Dana Lacadera,
mhm.
a phenomenal book, phenomenal artist, phenomenal person. And I asked her how she felt about her dad, who was the alienator. And she said she loves him. But she was strong enough mentally and physically to understand that what he was doing was wrong, but that she still cared about him. She was
Yep.
one of the ones I think that I want to see more of, where they had this understanding even at her age, which I think was what, 15, 16, when she was realizing all this.
I think she, if I remember correctly, she realized it much younger, but couldn't talk about it, couldn't address it, couldn't say
Exactly, because
anything,
the
and didn't.
retaliation she would have.
Right.
Yeah,
One, the retaliation. Two, she didn't have the vocabulary and words yet to get to that point.
exactly. Exactly. But she understood it, and just with a little bit of knowledge, training, education, this is capable for not just single individuals, but multiple children.
Correct.
That, hey, yeah, you love your parent because they're your parents, but one parent may not be good for you because of the actions they're doing. That doesn't change that they have to stop loving them. But that's the thing, is we said we were going to talk about medical neglect and how it's being used, but this is the thing: when lawyers, judges, agencies, medical professionals get involved, it becomes very, very murky.
Well, you brought it back to where we needed to come back to medical neglect by telling a child they can't love that other parent. I'm not
Hmm.
talking about a parent that, yes, a parent, should they be with the parent if that parent harmed them physically, sexually, whatever? No, that's a problem. Not unless that child is old enough and able to protect themselves safely. Okay. And I'm not saying that this is really how we want to raise our kids. But let's be real, there are a lot of very dangerous people out there. And whether we want to believe it or not, our children do need to know how to protect themselves. Okay? Because they're going to meet people like this at work.
Yeah.
And if they don't know how to manage a toxic or difficult person at home, they're never going to be able to handle them in the real world. And then what happens is those are the kids that end up marrying an abuser because it's the only thing they know, it's the only thing they're comfortable with, and they don't know anything differently.
Yeah. I mean, let's be realistic. This isn't the 1940s, the 1950s where you can leave your house unlocked and everybody go, you get off work, you put your hat on the hat rack, what's for dinner, honey? Where are the kids? How are they? That don't exist anymore.
No.
Both
So,
parents work to
yep.
to support their kids. They come home, they're tired. They still have to do laundry, take care of the house, take care of their kids, get them up for school, and then they go to work. It's the society of unlinked families is the way I want to put it.
Okay.
We have our family units, but they're not linked like it used to be.
I know it's the people this person I'm working with now, the kid says to the mother, um, I just did laundry at dad's house. I don't have to do chores at your house. I only have to do them at dad's. Excuse me, real world. But this is a time that the mother could do critical thinking with the
Yeah,
child. She could say to the child, that's interesting. So you, what if the tables were turned and you were the parent and your child said that to you? Or do you think that's what happens in your friend's house? That they only have to do chores in one house? Or if this was an intact family, would your responsibilities and chores change? Just change? Critical thinking to get the kid to recognize, wait a minute, this doesn't make logical sense, and they correct their behavior on their own.
exactly. And I can't remember who said this, but we have desensitized individuals to being families with cell phones, tablets. Everywhere you go, everybody's got something in front of their face. Even at dinner tables, I've seen it myself where families sit down, they're all on a separate phone and they're texting each other. They're sitting right across from each other, but they're texting each other. We have lost the link, and it has been used in the court system, in the medical field, to separate children.
Wait, I have an even worse one. These phones, the TV, it's in this family I'm working with this mother. Those are like the two things that are constantly needing to be controlled by one parent or the other. And I've already said something about that, hey, look, you know, you're going to have to choose your battles. If the issue with the phone is that she's on it the whole time with the other parent, well, that's a different story. But you have a conversation, say, hey, would it be fair if I did that to you while you were at your dad's? Why don't we make a rule? 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Let the child be part of the process on, in some things,
Yeah.
because then it helps the child to learn how to make critical decisions and be responsible about decision making and build and create and doing things.
You know, it's funny. Some of my fondest memories growing up is now I have large family, 8 brothers and two sisters. And as I got older, one thing we did every weekend, everybody sat down at the table. We had big meals. We played games every weekend. Then as people got older, they got their own lives. It became less and less. And I was just talking to several of my brothers the last couple of weeks, and we all remember those times fondly.
But you don't do them.
I when I became a parent, my one rule is dinner, we sit down together at the same table, no cell phones, no TV, no radio, we talk. Now, what I noticed, and it was great with everybody until the concept of divorce came in. All
That
of a
should never have
sudden,
come in.
yeah, all of a sudden, the other parent didn't want to sit down with us, didn't want the kids to sit down with me. These are little things I didn't think anything of. I just thought, hey, the thing. But they are indicators. After the years of talking to people like you, Mark Roseman and everything, I look back and I see the indicators of what was there. And I go like, could I have prevented any of it? We all ask ourselves who dealt with
Have we
divorce and
learned?
everything,
Interesting.
could we have changed anything?
That's also a key indicator of a good parent being able to introspect.
But the courts don't look at this stuff. The lawyers don't look at this stuff. I have no ill will towards my ex in any way, shape, or form, which some people find amazing with what I've gone through. But at the same time, I have to look at she's their mom. If I were to do what she's done, I would be no better than her. You have to let go of that anger for being betrayed or however you want to phrase it, because that's not benefiting the children.
Yep.
And when we talk about medical neglect, you substitute the parents for, what's the term I'm looking for the entities that are doing it.
Yes.
Because it's the same thing across the board, just different players.
Yes. It is. Well, I always tell people parental alienation doesn't just happen by a parent doing it to a parent. An agency, a relative, a friend can even do it.
Yeah.
So it's again genderless, raceless, ageless,
The
religionless.
only thing the only thing that stays constant is the children pay the price.
Yep.
That's the only thing that stays
And
constant.
the targeted parent, because look, the children primarily get the full brunt, but I've got too many parents that are dying because of it.
True.
Just like the adverse childhood experiences affect a child, adverse adult experiences affect an adult.
True. But and this is what I like about the way we handle these debates is I always focus on the children. As I believe as adults, we can handle just about anything out there. Um, it's not easy, but we have the mental and faculties to do it for the
Yep.
most part. So I focus more on the children, where you focus on the entirety. I microscope it. You look at the whole picture. So it gives our debate show an interesting viewpoint, because we've both gone through things. We both speak from experience. We both speak from research and stuff. And we've spoken to countless parents, countless adult children who've lived through it that don't have a voice. And we become that voice. We get them on the show. We let them tell their story. And, we've done so many interviews on PSI with parents and professionals, and people don't realize that we don't just stop when we end the camera. We're still talking with these people, and they talk and tell us more and more what their experiences. This is why I became a lawyer. This is why I became a doctor. It all comes back to what they experience as children. So if you have a child that's being abused mentally, physically by a system, what are their experiences? What are they going to view the world as?
Yep. It's true. And
So
that's why this adverse experiences, skip the adult, skip the child,
yeah,
adverse experiences, period, it plays a big part. And if a person isn't able to heal from it, or even knows that they have it and that it's affecting them,
yeah, that who I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's too early in the morning. I haven't had a full cup of coffee yet. But we just got done interviewing a few months ago, out of Missouri. You know who I'm talking about?
oh yes, the mother and the daughter.
No, the dad who was alienated and then
Oh,
realized it when he was 37.
you mean
David
no, Scott.
Scott. What I liked about his story is he was a prime example. Is he didn't realize what was going on, and then even as an adult, he didn't realize it because the the script was written already. But he found someone that understood what was going on just by him talking, and then having himself realize it. It happens. Now, the bad part about that, in my opinion, is sometimes when it happens, it sends that person so far off the rails that they lose themselves completely.
Yep.
It's one of the things because mental health is always in the topic of our show. We talk about mental health today like it's M&Ms.
Well, part of the problem is because we haven't, this, our society, what we live through, these lessons, or what I call life, living in an, it- it's the life experiences that we have, okay, that
Mhm.
make are what we're supposed to learn from, okay? An experience is good if you learn from it and bad if you don't learn from it. So you could have an experience of being in a horrible car accident. What did you learn? Well, I learned that I need to be more careful on the road, or I learned that I need to make sure my tires are in good shape, or I learned that when it's pouring rain that I can't see that I pull over to the side of the road, whatever. This is a bad experience that you learned from. Life is about those lessons.
Yeah. It's not how many times you fail, it's how many times you get up.
But we
Um,
have a lot of parents who keep picking themselves up, and they feel like they're really strong. They talk the talk like they're really strong, and the next day they're dead because they have taken an overdose. Because while one of my clients, this just
yeah.
happened to
What I would like people to do,
her ex went up to her in court after she won in court, and he terrorized her, threatened her.
yeah.
His you she couldn't take anymore.
What I would like people to do is if you're dealing with this, is just go to a coffee shop, go to McDonald's, whatever, just sit there and listen and then start a conversation with a stranger about the subject matter. And you'll see how many people outside of yourself have experienced it or are going through it. And nobody talks about it because it's a taboo.
Yeah, look, one thing that everybody needs to realize is it isn't abnormal for somebody to get so upset about a situation that they feel like they were dead. This, if you didn't have that feeling at least once in your life about some situation, then you would have absolutely no empathy and no compassion.
Yep.
It's when you take it to the next step and you actually kill yourself, whether you did it accidentally or on purpose, that's where the mental health line comes. So if, for example, if one person knows that their other spouse is very sensitive, easy to control, and that they have a tendency to get sad easily, oh, they could trigger them easily and deliberately, intentionally cause emotional distress for them to commit suicide or stop taking care of themselves
Yep.
or self-harm to
I
themselves.
I recall I watched I think it was 60 Minutes and they were doing a thing on suicides and they were interviewing a guy who attempted suicide but failed and he literally said as I pulled the trigger and I heard the pop, the thought I had was I don't need to be doing this. And it wasn't just him, it was other individuals who failed their attempted suicides. They all said the same thing that as they did it, their brain said, don't do it, don't do it. But it was already done. Now, luckily, these people survived. I think, honestly, suicide, and we're not going to get too religious on this, suicide is an easy way out. We view it as an easy way out, but it's not because our families, our children have to bear it now.
You have to imagine it as being the most brutal internal pain. Pain that not aspirin, not Demerol, aspirin or Aleve, that anything will stop that pain. Pain so searing inside
Yeah.
that you don't know what else to do to make it
Yeah.
stop. And that is intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent infliction of
How
emotional
many
distress.
parents do you know self-medicate because what they're going through?
Yep, absolutely. I, I, I would tell you that at least in the very beginning, 75% of parents had
Yep.
either relied on alcohol or some other mind altering or substance to deal with the trauma, the pain, the not seeing their kids, the heartache Okay.
And the other thing about it is they start surrounding themselves with people who are the
Aren't
same way, or they aid in the self-medication, and they distance themselves from the loving, caring people that they have around them.
they feel like they aren't worthy.
Exactly.
Now, not all parents will go to that extent. They will,
No.
some will start and they'll do this, and then they realize, wait a minute, this isn't helping, and or they do it for a little bit because they just need a break from everything, and then they come back to themselves and they're like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
done. I did what I needed to do to get this out of my system.
One of the things that I've never hidden since I've started advocating it is the fact that in the very beginning, I literally had a mental breakdown for 3 days. I cannot recall 3 days. I had to take people's words with and they had found me in a room holding a picture of my kids and my wife, begging God to come back. And anytime anybody approached me, I acted out like an animal and just started kicking and growling and stuff. And I remember when I came out of it, I had a laser light focus that no matter what I did, I had to help my kids. People don't want to admit to this stuff. They think it's shameful. It shows their
Oh,
weakness or whatever. It's not.
no, it was actually a primal instinct for you to go into to protective mode, but you didn't know your that primal instinct is inappropriate in today's day and age. You had to
Mhm.
get through that primal instinct that you may not have realized, so that you could get to where it would you could do critical thinking as to what
Exactly.
you had to do.
You there's an old saying, and you see it in some old Western movies. You're a cup, basically, and your cup can only hold so much.
What?
Once it starts spilling over, you're gonna break in some way. It's not a sign of weakness or anything. It's natural. You have to let that emotion out.
Right. And that's part of the problem. When we keep stuffing it in, it blows up on the sides.
Yeah,
It's, you know, and so instead of getting addressed, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like like the person who gained 600
yeah,
freaking pounds.
yeah. And unfortunately, in the legal world, to admit something like that, like I do, the opposite side will use that against you.
Yep.
And it shouldn't be used as a weapon. It should be, hey, this person cares so much.
Well,
They had this issue.
Well, it's not so much that you cared, it's that there was a trigger. Okay, while you had this amazing childhood, somewhere there was one of your primal instincts didn't get kind of like addressed. And
Yeah.
so it finally came, you were finally allowed to have this break and to have a temper tantrum, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. That you never were allowed before you when something so traumatic, so horrific, the loss of a pair of your kids, which as a child you probably imagined as the loss of your parents or something, whatever, you finally had were allowed to have a temper tantrum because you didn't know how else to manage it.
This is why I love having the show with you, is because you hit spot on. I can tell you exactly what it was. When I was age 11, I had surgery, and the doctor told my parents that I probably would never be able to have kids. So that is the mentality I grew up with. Then after meeting my wife, we have our first son, which to me is just a miracle. And then to have that taken away,
Mm-hmm.
that triggered, because now I have something I never thought I would have, something so precious as my son's, and now the system is taking it away.
Right.
And I couldn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my brain around it.
No, it doesn't, because it doesn't make sense. It isn't logical. And when it
Exactly.
becomes illogical, we almost have to do a reset to figure out how could they even do this, because it doesn't even compute. It just, we're critical thinkers. We rationalize. We're going, well, this doesn't make sense. Why are they being taken when I haven't done anything wrong? Now I don't know how to respond because this is trauma that I was terrified of as a child in the first place, that I would never have kids, and here I have kids, and they are being taken from me.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, growing up, we're told to trust our system, trust our judiciary, trust lawyers, police officers, thing. And when this stuff happens, and to us as adults, we start telling our kids, don't trust them. Don't trust them. because this could happen, that could happen. We come up with so many imaginary scenarios where the system is against us. So we teach this to our kids, they teach it to their kids. Now we have a society that doesn't trust any governmental society. And unfortunately, that's what we're
But
living in now.
also, but Clint, also by example, these kids have seen it. So these kids, have seen that the system didn't
Yeah.
work. So it is an actual adverse childhood experience as
Yeah.
much as it is an adverse adulthood experience.
In closing, I want to bring up, look at I was really debating about not doing this, but I'm going to bring it up. The Charlie Kirk killing.
Right. We don't have to agree with everything Charlie Kirk said. It didn't, there was no reason to, this
But
killing was
but
mental.
here's the thing. Charlie Kirk didn't really have it one way or the other. He just debated people with logic, with common sense. And that's what we don't want in today's society. Now, why the actual reason this individual took
No,
Charlie
that's
Kirk's
not
life,
why Charlie Kirk.
I don't
Charlie
think we'll
Kirk,
ever really know.
right? That
Uh,
Charlie Kirk's debate had nothing to do with this guy's killing him. This guy's killing him was about somebody who had some kind of mental break for some reason that we don't know yet. Will we ever know? I think eventually we will. I just think it's not, it may not be what we expect, or it may be more than what we expect.
but what I wanted was the fact that this even happened, and the fact
Right.
that the backlash that you see all over the states and everything now, people who want to mourn Charlie Kirk and his passing. I've seen signs spray painted with derogatory comments about Charlie Kirk.
It's unacceptable behavior.
Exactly. But at the same time,
Uh,
no
you know,
one.
I, you and I, you're a Trump, you like Trump, I'm not a Trumper, but it doesn't determine and define our discussion.
Okay. But it you know, what got me when it happened and everything, all you heard about was the actual killing and stuff. No one thought about his children or his family, what they have to go through now with all the media publicity that's going on, positive and negative. You know, um, now I've seen on Facebook, and it shocked me that people from our generation, you know, Metallica, Ozzy Osbourne's family, all these, they have stated that they're going to help the family out. But I have yet to see a politician, a lawyer, judge, or anything like that openly speak that the family needs our time, needs time to reflect,
Yeah.
stop bringing this up.
Yeah. Well, but Clint, that's everywhere. Every time there's somebody dies that's famous or that has a face, you're going to have it rhetoric. So it's not just the Charlie Kirks, it's the JFKs, it's the Bobby Kennedys, it's the,
Well,
Trump.
as a
You know,
journalist, as a registered journalist, I've been asked literally why I have not done any stories on this. I don't do a story on it out of the respect for the family.
right. And to be honest, this only story is there is no excuse for killing.
Exactly.
That's the only story. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
Well, I would suspect that this kid was just really deranged. He
Well,
just, something happened.
from what I've read, is the dad prompted this individual to do it, because I
Who
again, this is
reported
what I
it? The
read.
mother or the father? I thought the father reported it.
As I believe the mother reported it, because
Okay.
the father,
So,
as I've read the reports, the father's the one that prompted this kid, because the kid was transgender, and they had watched a debate that apparently Charlie Kirk did on transgender and stuff, and the dad prompted him to do it. I was like, now there's no validation to the report. This is just what's being passed along the media
yeah, we
blogs and
need to,
everything.
before we make, okay, so folks, this is just one theory that's
Yeah,
being panhandled out there.
yeah. But what got me about it is that came out within 48 hours of the arrest with no validation. So people have to be careful about what they hear about this sort of stuff. You know, we treat it when you talk about parental alienation or family court reform, you hear all kinds of theories out there. So treat it the same way you would this. Validate. Wait for the final evidence of why this happened.
Yeah, because the reality is, what I heard the first day is that the father reported it to the police and turned his son in.
Yeah, see, and that's the whole thing is you never really know what the facts are or the truth is until that individual speaks. So with allegations of abuse, neglect,
Could be true, could be false.
yeah,
And as they, look, we never will deny that there isn't true abuse out there, but in the same token, we expect people to be respectful, to to accept that yes, there is parental alienation as a form of psychological abuse is happening.
exactly.
And it is
And I
dangerous.
I think a large part of it is we need to show,
Solidarity to work on this
yeah,
together.
yeah,
We're not
because
going to,
that
they don't
with
just,
every debate I've ever watched, I went back and I watched several of them because at first I didn't know his name at first. I watched his debates and I loved them, but I think he was trying to bring people together on every subject matter that you could think. He wasn't running for an office or anything like that. He was just trying to bring people together. So it would have been amazing. And I thought about it several times about reaching out to him and getting him on the show and debating parental alienation or something like that. Um, but let's just have respect because now the family has to deal with it.
right.
Um,
In closing, folks, what we're asking you to do here is give Charlie's family a chance to breathe.
yeah,
Let them do some mourning. This, when it's something like this, where it is a sudden death, they're already in shock.
yeah,
And there are too many rumors flying.
yeah.
So let's let them breathe, let them have the chance to heal. Clint, I
So
think this is a good place to
yeah,
kind of
this is
end.
a good place to end the show for the night or for the day. um, what I want people to know is something we're going to be bringing up maybe next show, maybe the next show after that, is because we always talk about it. I go back and I watch several of our shows, is the cycle. You hear us using the term cycle, generational abuse cycle, and all this stuff. So it's something we're going to be talking about because we need to understand how the cycle starts, how it continues, and how you can break it. That's
Correct.
the important part. So, folks, have a good weekend, a good Sunday. Joni's going to go and save the world. I'm going to go and have a cup of coffee.
Bye, guys.